Welcome back to the 2 Months Podcast presented by SeatGeek, and I'm your host, Joshua Marshall. We are also powered by Go Goat Sports out in Vancouver, so we like to welcome them for powering us. And we have a very special guest joining us today. You can find him on 630 Ched, Oilers Now, and you can also find him on the Elks coverage too. So he covers the Eskimos, he covers the Elks, he's everywhere. We'd like to welcome Brenden Escott to the 2 Months Podcast. Esky, what's going on, bud?
Appreciate it, Bosco. It's good to see you. Good to chat with you, and thanks for
Yeah,
the invite.
no worries, no worries. I know we've talked about this for a while, so it's finally nice
Mm-hmm.
to get this going. And sorry for the super long delay on my end, but yeah, how are things with you? How's life?
Yeah, no, life happens, man. All good. We just got a puppy the other day, yesterday, in fact. So I guess I'm kind of adjusting to life as a new dad in a sense. I've had a dog for a little bit now, but never a puppy from the start. So this
Yeah,
is kind of a new adventure, and I'm all about it. But otherwise, I mean, as you can imagine, work is pretty busy, and we're walking into that crossover period where we've got Oilers and Elks and everything in between going on. So it's the fall is probably my favorite time of year, I would
yeah,
have to
yeah.
admit.
I guess like for me, like how do you find the balance? Because I think like you're the utility knife blade, whatever the word is. Like you do so much at 630 Chad for course, and congratulations on the 5 year anniversary too. I think that was like last week or the week before. But how do you balance all that out with so much other shows you do help out with, and obviously the main shows that you do with too?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I think that I place a high value in terms of being employable on being versatile. And so I really enjoy kind of all aspects of the radio stuff. And if you stick around long enough, and I guess 5 years as of last Sunday, a week ago, from the date that we're recording this, you pick up a few things along the way. So I just say yes to everything and then eventually end up with a very full plate, but it's full in the sense of tasks that I need to complete, and it's full in how rewarding it is as well. I mean, the access to both these teams, and it's such a passion project, obviously. So to be
Yeah.
able to do that for a career, I consider myself incredibly fortunate for sure.
Yeah, no, you've been moving up the ranks, and it's like kind of cool to see, from where you started, with the Nate program with Tony Barr, I believe, right? So another good
Mm-hmm.
ball hockey guy there too. So, and yeah, for people that knows, I battled against Brenden Escott in ball hockey, played for the Smashville with those guys, and I played for the Dirty Birds, so we played against each other for that one season, I believe. But and we might get into a little bit of that. But let's get to our NHL reports, sponsored by Sheena Boychuk. And Brenden, the big news today, I guess, fortunately or unfortunately, I guess the hashtag all over Twitter is Biz is right. So Paul Bissonnette, obviously on Tuesday on the Spit Chicklets podcast, broke the news of Mike Babcock, dealings with some of the players. And it kind of seemed like it was going to go a little bit away because with his comment, his release, and Boom Jenner's release, and what Johnny Gaudreau said on the 32 Thoughts podcast, and then obviously that didn't go that way. The players spoke up, and Biz was right, and whatnot, and obviously Mike Babcock resigns from his position. Just kind of wondering where you stand on this situation with Mike Babcock now out, and do you also think this maybe ruins his chances of getting into the Hockey Hall of Fame too now?
Oh, I hadn't thought about the Hall of Fame angle yet. I might have to circle back around on that one, because there's a lot of success. There's a coaching tree essentially that you can follow, and there's a lot of sort of rotten content in there as well. And here's the thing for me is now that due process has been taken and there was several days worth of a thorough investigation, I think we're okay to pass judgment now. What's
Yeah,
difficult for me is when it breaks initially and everyone's sort of leaping to one side or the other. I think it's sometimes best to sort of wait till the dust settles a little bit. In this case, in fact, those who were, siding with Biz and the journalistic nature of this, and to me, that is journalism, right? He gets a tip, he's got a source. and he takes it public for the sake of the people. In this case, the people being the hockey players. So to me, this is a prime example of why journalism is so bloody important, and journalism like what you're doing right now, Josh, and that sort of thing. So as for Babcock, look, he had 4 years to change his methodology, to really invest himself into learning, what I believe is a new forward way of thinking. He's got to connect with today's athlete because that's who he's coaching. He's got to adhere to today's standards because that's the world that we're living in. And while his accolades are spectacular in what he's accomplished as a coach and what he's gotten out of players in the past, we can't just simply take that and say, well, you'd better adhere to what I'm doing. The athlete rules the day. The athlete gets paid way more money, and to see this play out several days before the start of training camp, I think is wild, but you'd almost prefer that it has, rather than this getting further into the season, or at least I guess there's some time for things to be salvaged a little bit for this group. But you also have to think about the divide that's created, because you had the captain that came out and made a joint statement essentially and sort of backed the coach, and you had Johnny Gaudreau, when put on the spot, who said the same thing. So now you've got essentially the Players Association that's siding with the young members of the team who were uncomfortable with the conduct of Babcock, and you've got an older veteran leadership core who has now publicly backed the coach in this situation. So I wonder what that means moving forward. I wonder how they repair that relationship.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. That Tuesday was crazy because we we were scheduled to have Paul Bissonnette on our podcast, and
Really?
yeah, so right, obviously we would say the chair you're sitting, but we're on a Zoom call. But the spot you're hosting right now, Biz was sitting there, and just his phone was going off. But he's like, let's push it back an hour. So we waited an hour. Then Mike Fuda sat on the call with us, and we waited an extra hour, and then that hour came up again, and he was sitting there again, and he was like, guys, it's too crazy. Like, his phone was
Yeah.
literally blowing up. He had to keep it on a charger. And then I got to talk to him. I don't really know him besides listening to his podcast. So, getting to know him through text and phone call conversations, he actually seems like a really genuine, good guy. Now, I know some other people have, cast judgment on maybe what their podcast is about or certain things that happens on their podcast. And that's different because every platform is kind of different. So if you want that niche, you're going to get that niche. If you're going to go for something else, you'll go for something else. But like you said, he's journalist. He did some journalism there, and he had a source that he trusted that enough to do it. And from the process that he told me is that he got this information Wednesday, and he took 4 days to get the right information out, and that was on a Sunday when he recorded his podcast, which released on a Tuesday. So it took him about 4 days to kind of gather as enough information as possible for him to kind of get it out there. So we'll see the fallout now. Is the management in jeopardy here, Brenden? Where do you come out on that? Do you think there's maybe some higher situations to happen here with Jarmo Kekalainen or John Davidson? Where do you stand on that?
Hey man, I wonder as well. I sent Reed Wilkins the text message too, as the GM in the hot seat. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got to wonder, because he was just signed to 2 years, 4 million per, and this is coming on the redemption tour, right? Where
Yeah.
I think it was Elliot Friedman that made the point in a piece that he wrote, like, basically he had to be perfect because of the microscope that he was under, given his reputation. But in this instance, you had to be 100% sure that it wasn't just somebody with bad feelings toward Babcock, with malintent toward Babcock, out to smear the name of a guy who's just trying to get his reputation back. And if in fact he had smeared his own name by his own actions, then that needed to be determined through a process. And it sounds like that is exactly what was determined
Yeah.
through a seemingly very thorough process.
Yeah. Yeah. And now the shift moves over to Pascal Vincent, who comes the new head coach. I don't know too much about him besides maybe he's more of a player's coach from what I heard just a little bit today. I've been in the rinks for minor hockey, but some people I just exchanged a few texts with. Do speak highly of him, but I got to do some more research. I don't know how much research you know about him and his process of being a a head coach and moving forward with him and getting his due now as a head coach.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's going to be a brand new introduction for me as
Yeah,
well. I would have to go on the old Google machine and try and figure out exactly what kind of a fit this is going to be for Columbus. And it comes at a time where I don't really know that Columbus has an identity at this
yeah,
point. What I do know is I've always liked Boone Jenner as a player. Both in what he does on the ice and who he appears to me to be as a leader. So we'll see, as I mentioned, how they move forward in the dressing room with a young era that they're ushering in, and some very highly talented players, guys like Kent Johnson, Cole Sillinger, Fantilli, if he makes things happen this year or next.
yeah,
So there's lots of things to consider. I'd like to believe they've got the kind of character in that room that they'll be able to move forward with the players, forming a quality group, and then you supplement that with a coach who, as you say, Josh, you got to figure if you're going from Babcock and a guy who has a very strong reputation and sort of just this lore about himself where he can kind of command the room on his own, right?
yeah.
You're definitely shifting that in a different direction, so you're going to need somebody else to sort of be the vocal leader, I would think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So we'll finish up there. We'll see how the rest of this process plays out. It's probably not going to be the end of it, but this is just maybe the start, and we'll leave. Stay tuned to Oilers Now because you probably get some more great coverage on it there with the plugged in insiders that you guys have and all that. So for anyone that's looking for more information, and Brenden Escott will be hosting Oilers Now tomorrow from 5 to 7. So be in the host chair. How's that process been when you get in that host chair? I know it's happening quite a few times here, and how awesome is that to kind of experience the different side of it and growing maybe that toolbox that you keep adding to your skill set there.
Yeah, it's ultimately what I want to do, right? It's what I'm striving for
Yeah,
at this point. Play by play was a great passion of mine, and I think that really hosting is it's so fulfilling for me. And so when I get the opportunity to do it with Bob's platform, I mean, first of all, it's like it's a large amount of trust, and I'm not kind of naive to that, I suppose. Like the listenership is great and it's intimidating, and you had better come prepared because they know more than you do, man. and
yeah.
and
That
so
text line is
it's
going off at times. Eh?
well, it really forces you to be at the top of your game, and or at least strive to
Yeah,
be, and that's sort of where I've really enjoyed that. And then the reps that I've been able to get in the meantime in the summertime doing the Elks pre and post game, and what a roller coaster that's been all season
yeah,
long. But to where we're at right now, and being able to sort of grow with the team and grow from very solemn broadcasts to very energetic sounding broadcasts now, and deep in a season we're actually with a team that was 0-9, we're talking about playoffs there. So each step of the way it just feels like I'm being entrusted with more and being able to sort of expand the toolbox, as you say. And if that ultimately ends up in the Brenden Escott show, then fantastic. I
yeah.
mean, I really had a great time talking more than just hockey with Inside Sports over the course of the summer as well. So hopefully this hard work pays off in a bigger way sometime real
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah. So are you still doing the intermissions with the Oilers too, Brendan? Like, do you still get to go down to the locker room area and interview the players after like first and second period? Because I know you were doing
Yeah,
it before, but I believe, are you still doing it now?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
So essentially, like I stroll into Rogers Place typically after a work day, and they're playing during the week a lot.
Yeah.
I stroll in there an hour before the game, head upstairs, and then my first obligation is to, if they're tied or if they're winning, I'll get a player for a walk-off interview, and that's just two questions. And
Off they go.
I
Yeah.
sort of pull the Oilers media person aside and tell them who I want. Generally, not Connor, not
Yeah.
Leon. You don't like
Yeah.
disturbing those two in a game. I don't want to be the guy disturbing those two
Yeah.
in a game.
Yeah.
But yeah. So if I don't get somebody in the first period because they're down, and then they mount a comeback in the second, I'll typically get to talk to somebody
Yeah.
there as well at the second period, and then at the end of the game, not only doing the walk off interview there if they've won, but then going and poking the old stick microphone in at the scrum, which
Yeah.
is again, when I say access, I mean, it's just so cool to sort of get the look behind the scenes and the excitement of the players and who sits beside who in the locker room and little comments that they say to one another, little quips that don't make the news at
Yeah.
11 p.m. afterwards. Those kinds of things are pretty special.
Yeah, they're definitely probably a very grateful moment for sure. We'll move over to the Elks. We don't do a lot of CFL coverage here, but you are very plugged into the CFL situation here, and I think maybe the firing that happened earlier in the year, and kind of seeing where or the resigning, whatever which way you want to go with it, but where do you stand on this team? Because Trey Ford seems to be the real deal. Following your tweets and what you're saying online, he just looks like a threat when he's moving. Can you talk about maybe the impact he's had since taking over as starting quarterback for the Elks?
Yeah, well, first of all, he coincides with the implementation of Jarius Jackson as offensive coordinator as well. Stephen McAdoo moved to the advisory role on the defensive side of the ball. So, first and foremost, you now have a quarterback at offensive coordinator. Perfect. You're working with a quarterback who has unlimited athleticism. It is special what we have been able to see. But I don't know that he had full ownership of that in the first several weeks of the season. He did at points last year and ran into the injury bug a little bit, but he is the type of person that a team can rally behind. I'll tell you a quick little story. And I was doing a little voice work for the team last year, and I asked them like, "Hey, instead of you guys paying me, can I just get a little bit of money to the merch store?"
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Why don't you figure out what $250 will get you? Do a bunch of stuff for us for the year. Okay. Um, and I picked out a Trey Ford jersey, and they ended up getting it signed for me. And for the longest time, I had this thing tucked away in my closet, thinking, "Boy," because they had signed Cornelius to the extension, and things were just, Trey wasn't getting a look at the beginning portion of this year. I'm thinking, I wish I would have gone a different direction with this jersey.
Yeah.
Now it looks like one of the smartest like long odds bets that I've ever made, because he has come in and, short of what Nathan Rourke did last year for BC, I can't remember somebody who's had this kind of instant impact in terms of what he's done in the win column, what he's done to re-energize a fan base. I've got, my sisters or people come over to my house. "Hey
Yeah.
man, like, when's the game next? I want to get a ticket and I want to come out. Who are they playing?" Like, there's actual interest. So we've seen a total evolution of this. And I don't want to give too much credit to Trey Ford, but good grief, watch him play a football game and you're going to leave with something that you're talking the next day about. He is a delight to watch, whether you're a fan of football or you're a fan of sports. It's been highlight reel stuff. So I think it's pretty tough to understate the impact that he's had. I don't know whether it's going to get them into the playoffs. The change happened late in the season. They were 0-8
Yeah.
by the time they made that move, but they're 4-2 since. So there's reason to believe that they could win a couple more of these games.
Yes. No, they're definitely trending, and their offense seems to be humming pretty good too. Where do you stand on Chris Jones? I know a lot of people were, a lot of hard questions. The hot seat was very hot for him. I know the contract's a tough one. Farhan Lalji and many of the guys there and Dave Naylor have done a good job explaining what that contract looks like and how maybe hard it is to get rid of. But is it looking like now that he still is the right guy for the job, and what you're kind of calling on, what he's maybe done differently? Maybe you touched on it there with kind of different offensive coordinator, but do you still think he's the right guy for the job here for the Elks?
I do, because for success and for winning to take place, you can't have a constant rotation of ideas and playbooks and coaches and management. And that's really what the Elks have been battling since 2019. They've had Brock Sunderland. They've had, Chris Presson was in for a period of time. Jamie Elizondo. Don't forget they had Scott Milanovic hired, and he never got to coach a game. So the fact that this is Chris Jones's second year and we're seeing improvement. They were 4-14 last season, and they're already at 4 wins now with 4 games left to go. So there's, it's not been a huge improvement. And I believe there was some stubbornness for sure in the beginning part of the season. But he eventually capitulated to the pressures,
Yeah.
or had a point at which he had his own limit that he was going to reach with Cornelius, and before a change needed to be made. And we got there. And again, I think that this is a process that had to take place over a couple of seasons, not just something that was going to be an instant turnaround. So here we are toward the end of year 2 of Chris Jones, and you're seeing a 4-2 record. All of a sudden, the team's going on a bit of a run. He's done this before with other teams.
Yeah.
So I think this has bought him some time. Obviously, Trey Ford's play has bought him some time. If anything's going to change, what I suspect is that he's going to reduce the front office role that he's sort of responsible. He's the GM, he's the director of player personnel, and he's the defensive coordinator. And I imagine that there's a lot that goes into all three of those things.
Yeah.
So maybe a little bit of help in one of those departments might help these
Yeah.
things.
Where you at with the defensive side of the game? Have you seen a good turnaround there from your experience being around professional football and just kind of being around this team for several years? Do you think there's been a shift in the defensive side of the game that has happened too?
They've got some guys. It was a very young defense, and
Yeah.
especially in the defensive backfield, young and unknown. But the past defense game, they've actually been pretty good throughout, and with guys that we weren't sure about coming into the season, guys like Kai Gray, guys like Marcus Lewis, who had an interception in the last game. Just people that have come in and sort of built their own brand in a sense. And then you're complementing that with pass rushers like AC Leonard, who at 31 or 2 years old is having a resurgent, maybe even a career year on both sides of the ball. He's got 2 receptions for like a bunch of yards and a touchdown, right? So he's making an impact there. Jake Ceresna is a true leader on this team. If you told me who the captains of these, or if you asked me rather who the captains of the Elks team are, I don't think they've designated anything, but I'm looking at Jake Ceresna, and I'm looking at Trey Ford in the way that they carry themselves and that sort of thing. What they don't really have, though, Bosco, is a great run defense, and that's sort of been something the teams have been able to expose. It's gotten better throughout the course of the year, and I guess what you have to do is just try and keep them in passing situations as much as possible in that sense.
Yeah. Let's get back to some hockey talk here. That's great CFL talk there, and we'll hopefully have some more in the near future on our podcast. And I know Hernan Salas has been connected with our producer here, Cameron Stewart, and I know Hernan wants to come on, and I'm sure you've dealt with him in your time, here in
Absolutely.
Edmonton. Yeah, as I think Tom Gazzola calls him, Latino Heat is his nickname. So everyone's got some great nicknames here in this town. But I've heard you and Tony always talk, and the great conversations that you guys have, and in Tony Barr. Can you kind of elaborate to maybe some of the fans that might not know the importance of having the role he does, but the role you do, and just that friend and brotherhood that you and Tony have?
It's not very common right now for people our age to be working where we are. And I don't know how to say it any other way, but we're working there with guys that are my dad's age. I turned 29 this week, and Tony's just a couple of years older than that. And then there's a big age gap, and that's incredibly intimidating when it comes to even just bumping shoulders and bumping elbows in those media scrums, frankly. So to have somebody that is not only approachable in that sense, he's also the nicest guy that you're ever going to come across. Everything that you see on camera and everything that you may have seen when you walk in and you see him at the rink, and he's got that big boisterous, just the nice, he is that's Tony Barr, man. So that was day 2 of us in college. Hey, I'm Tony, how's it going, man? And so for me to have that there as just kind of it's like an inadvertent support. He's the guy I sit next to up in the crow's nest, and when we're watching these games, and I mean, it's I could obviously do this by myself, but having him there it makes it very much more welcoming than I think it would otherwise be. And I don't say any of this to be disrespectful to any of the older guys. It's not that at all. It's more of me being shy. feel like I've really fully like jumped in and been like, yeah, I belong here with you guys. So maybe that's a step that I'll take this season. But I do think that Tony's made that quite a bit easier for me for sure.
Yeah, it's fun. And the reason why I brought it up is I just remember this. I don't know. I don't have a memory like Bob Stauffer, but I try to say I have a pretty good memory. And when Alexander Petrovich was with the Oilers in 2019, there the Oilers have that family and friends room downstairs, and
Mhm.
so I was outside that family and friends room just waiting for him after the game, and you guys were coming by and going down the hallway to the Oilers Hall of Fame room, and I just seen like you and Tony just walked by, and I seen like that connection that you guys had in person, and I'm like, that is special. And I'm like, that's 2019. We're in 2023. He's been in the show, done some live hits with you on 630 Chad on. So it's just kind of like it's cool. I always joke with Stoff
Yeah.
because Stoff always jokes too because he's like, "What? I don't get that too." But it's great when you have that that brotherhood and that someone that you lean on, right? And in
Mhm.
this industry there's so many people, and you're right, because we're still seeing a lot of the people our father's age that are in it, and now you're starting to see slowly that look at Kyle Bacostas with Sportsnet. He's another one
Yeah.
that's so skilled and so talented, and so that when you see that, I'm 39, but when you see the guys around your age giving that opportunity, it's cool because back when I was that age and stuff, you really never saw it. So you see the new wave coming in and how knowledgeable and personable and conversationable that you guys are. It's a great thing to see, and at my age I can learn from you guys too, so it's always fun that way. So
I appreciate that a
yeah,
lot. If I could just quickly
yeah,
say
you go
so, I mean,
ahead.
I
Yeah,
think that the generation that we have come up in, like we were able to practice so much in a very easy environment. Like Tyler Yaremchuk's old operation below the ice hockey,
yeah,
and he and Liam Harobin had, and Tony and I used to do little videos for that, like 5 minute long video segments during our lunch break at Nate's. So we
yeah,
were just able to like find this practice. And I don't know, if you go a few generations back, how accessible it would have been. And then for us to just post that on YouTube. And I've had people that have hired me say, I saw you guys working there. Like that's what kind of drew me to you. So
yeah,
we've been able to put our work out there, and it's helped a lot.
yeah. Was Tyler Yaremchuk in your guys' class too, or is he after
He
you
was a
guys?
semester ahead of us, I
Ahead of you
believe.
guys?
So he
Okay.
graduated, yeah, a little bit
Yeah. Okay.
before.
Yeah, because obviously everyone kind of knows him through the daily face off and whatnot,
Mhm.
Oilers Nation stuff there. So um we'll shift gears, obviously, in State of the Oilers kind of theme here. Shadified Salon and Barbershop's our sponsor. So I'm sure when Shaddy watches this, he's going to say, when I go in tomorrow and go see him, he's going to say, I want Brenden Escott to come in and get a haircut. So you already might already have someone, but if you don't, as Brenden will hook you up with Shaddy. He'll take care of you for sure. So, but
Sounds good.
I
Downtown location, is that where I find
He's
him, or
got
should I go to
he's got
Windsor?
he's got they have one downtown, they have one on the north side, and they have one on the south side too. So Shaddy's always at the north side location. So but I'm sure we can figure something out when you want to go in. We can line something up and he'll take care of you because
Okay,
he loves looking
I'll float
after.
you a text.
Exactly. There we go. So, we'll move over to the Oilers. Obviously, Connor Brown's one of the biggest additions coming in. So, where are you at with the Oilers and their additions that they've had this year? And are they? I know it might be maybe too soon to say they're Stanley Cup contenders. I know maybe the situation in goal has to kind of slowly figure itself out, and maybe the Jack Campbell gets back to form. But where are you at with the Edmonton Oilers right now?
They're absolutely contenders. I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm ready to call them the favorite, but they're absolutely contenders. I mean, you've got to, at some point, you've got to buy in and believe in yourself, and I think that what we're seeing right now with the changes that the organization is making, even in the front office, is that kind of wholesale commitment. And you see a guy like Connor Brown, where uh, he's willing to play for. I mean, I guess it's not peanuts in the end, but it's a pretty funny salary when you look at how it breaks down. And this is a place where people want to come and try and win right now, or try and catapult themselves to the next contract, or whatever the case may be. So all of these things are fantastic. Two things that I think that you really need to hone in on over the course of this year as people become contenders and then sellers subsequently. Um, are you deep enough defensively? Because I don't believe you are right now. I am not sold on Philip Broberg. I would like to see big step forward from him, because if I don't, I just don't know that the combination of him and Vinny Desharnais as your 6, 7 guys. I'm not confident enough with that going into. That's going to get you out of round one. Of course it is. Is that going to get you the Stanley Cup over your head? I'm a little less sure about that. So
Okay.
now I'm looking at who I can add, and even if it's just a guy on a smaller contract that you're bringing in over the course of the season. Ethan Bear, when he gets healthy from this injury, I know that name's been bandied about. It's something like that. How do you fortify the right side of this defense? Otherwise, I really like the mix that they've got, and it's going to be very entertaining for me to see how they go about the deployment of the back end, because you can reduce the play of Nurse and maybe help disguise some of what we saw is like maybe turnover prone
Yeah.
play last year. And maybe that goes away when he's playing 19 minutes a game instead of 23, like he has been for the past several years. So that's the kind of thing I'd like to watch on the back end. Are you tough enough now?
Yeah.
And I don't think that they are at this stage. They haven't replaced Clean Costin. That was a player who was tough to see go because of the elements that he brought, and because it's tough to replace that type of player. But I think that, over the course of the next several months between now and March 8th of 2024, you're going to be able to, fortify the bottom part of the forward group. And with that, at some point, somebody I think will become available. It's right now been interesting to see who they've invited on PTOs, because there hasn't been any toughness really at it. I suppose Adam Ernie is a bigger body, but he's not going to go out there and strike the fear of God into anybody,
No,
right?
no. Yeah. I wonder if they, at some point here, maybe go after a guy like Nick Delorier. I know he's got some term left on his contract with the Flyers, but I just wonder if that's a player that the Oilers grab. He's under I think he's $1.4 million, so it's not a very expensive contract, but they do have a lot of toughness there with Nick Seeler and whatnot too. But I wonder if that's a player that the Oilers maybe go after. We'll see. We'll see what the Flyers do too in that. But
Mhm.
yeah, I agree. And I mentioned this to Stoff a while back that I think it was about 2 years ago, Brenden, on your show, you guys had a Swedish reporter on talking about Philip Broberg, and I can't remember his name. Maybe it was Mike.
Mike Zanier, I believe,
Yeah,
is his name. Yeah.
yes, yeah, and I know he wasn't solely sold on Broberg, and where we see everything now. Do you think maybe it's still too early for the prediction on him, or maybe Mike kind of right on what he saw back then to what we're at now?
I think it's tough because Mike was watching him play in the pandemic. If you're looking back
Yeah,
just 2 years, and I will stand by it. I've said this a few times before. Uh, you're hard pressed to show me maybe Shane Wright. You're hard
yeah,
pressed to show me a player whose development was stunted more by the pandemic than Philip Broberg. And I know he was battling injuries. He played through injury at that World Junior tournament, but things really kind of plateaued there, if not sort of regressed. And you look at the rest of that draft class now, and this is when people start to tap their watch and say, well, wait a minute here. Everybody else in this draft class in the top 10 has now played 175 games, I believe it is, in the
yeah,
NHL, except for Alex Turcotte, who's played 12 and is essentially a write-off at this point in Los
yeah.
Angeles, and Philip Broberg, who's played like 68 or 69. So it's waiting. People are needing the traction now. And the other reason that I think that this is a make or break deal for Philip Broberg this year, you mentioned the Flyers. If I'm the Flyers and I'm looking to sell, whether it's somebody as big as Travis Konechny, let's say, or somebody more of a role player like Delorier, who I would absolutely love to see in Edmonton, by the way. I wish he would have signed here a
Yeah.
couple of years ago instead of Philadelphia. But, if that's the case, I just totally derailed my
Yeah, no,
train of thought.
no. I think just more or less on like, is that a player that you would part with? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, sorry. So, okay,
Yep.
there we go.
Yeah.
So, Broberg to me is absolutely going to draw interest from Philadelphia still on March 8th of 2024. You know what I mean? Particularly when you stack that with a draft pick or two. So that would be where you're deploying Philip Broberg if he doesn't show some significant traction for me in the first several weeks of this season. That's what
Yeah.
I'd say.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And, I saw some people have him on the left side and Ekholm on the right side. So we'll see if maybe that's something they do. I don't know if that, that's maybe giving him too much ice time, but we'll see what happens there. Or maybe you move CC down and he's in the third pair with CC. We'll see what happens. I'm sure they'll add, Jeff Jackson hire was a great hire for them. Let's finish up on some college football here, Brenden Escott. I know you're big into the college football, way more than I am, but I am very fascinated by what we're seeing with Deion Sanders and his Colorado group here. Can you kind of give a good rip? I just saw Craig Button tweeted out the average tickets, last year for, going there were like 100 and, here, yeah, $121. And now it's like $517 this year. The importance that you have on your worth and what you can bring to a sport. And I think Deion Sanders has brought that. Mr. Prime Time, every name that you can come with, he brings it. He brings cachet, and he's a great role model. And obviously his kids are on the team too. But what he's done, I think they're at a 3-0 record here too.
They are now 3-0 after a double overtime victory over Colorado State, who was not expected to dance with them the way that they did. But it was thrilling, and the whole story has captivated the whole college football world. I wouldn't have looked twice at the Colorado Buffaloes last year. Why would I have? They finished 1-11. But you've got this guy who brings his two sons up. I say this guy, he's a Hall of Famer. He's probably the best defensive back ever to play in the NFL. And he's got his two sons playing down at an FCS school, a historically black college university at Jackson State, and takes the top recruit out of last year's college recruiting class, in Travis Hunter, and he brings him to a school where nobody would ever otherwise have been recruited to. So right away, you know that this guy wants to play for this coach. Now, all these players who were recruited to play with Coach Prime there made the jump from Tier 2 football up to NCAA Division 1, where again, everyone's still kind of like, I don't know how this is going to work out, but okay, we'll watch. Not one win, not two wins, 3 wins for Coach Prime. And you mentioned it, his charisma is what makes this story so fun to follow, and I think so marketable as well. I've seen some literature about his business agent. It's a woman that has been able to market the whole Coach Prime thing, and it's an absolute tidal wave of positivity, because it's been a whole thing of this underdog story. You don't believe in us. You don't believe that we're going to be able to, do what we're doing. You didn't believe we'd be able to recruit Travis Hunter. Well, we did. You didn't believe we'd be able to recruit all these kids up to Colorado. We did. So you're right. It's about more than just football, but even the football aspect of it has been special, because now his son, Shadur, the quarterback of the team, I think he's worth $4.1 million in NIL earnings, his name and image likeness.
Yeah.
And I don't imagine that that's going to go down in the foreseeable future. His draft stock is just skyrocketing. It's been incredible.
That's awesome. It's a great way to finish up a good interview here. I appreciate the time with you, on our podcast, and we look forward to having you on again, and maybe we'll do more of a roundtable kind of discussion at some point here. But all the best to you. Great success. Have a great year. Finish out the Elks strong, and looking forward to a strong year with the Edmonton Oilers, and all the continued success at 630 Ched. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great stuff, Bosco. Thanks for having me, man.